Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the FSR Conversations. It's a series featuring leading actors and policymakers of the European and global energy landscape. Last Wednesday, at the State of the Union address, Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced that the European Commission is proposing to increase 2030 target for emission reduction to at least 55%. From one side, it's not surprising because it's very clear that ambition is needed to keep temperature rise to below 1.5 degrees. But from all the important messages that she mentioned during her union address, this one drew particular attention. Christopher.
So, Dieter, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really happy you do just 1 week before you retire. I don't know what we call you: architect of the clean energy package, master of the grid codes, architect of the hydrogen energy sector integration strategy. So we'd love to hear you, just your own reflections. I don't know, 15, 20 minutes on where you'd like energy policy to land in 5 or 10 years. And also, you know, some reflections on for you of what has been achieved in the last 5 years, and more importantly, what could have been done better. So the floor is yours, Dieter. We look forward to hearing your views.
Thank you very much, Christopher. But first of all, I'm just a humble civil servant for another week. Although I'm looking for retirement, I'm still in very good shape. And I hope you can make use of this today in this conversation. Indeed, a very interesting time. As you all know, the Green Deal is the top priority of the von der Leyen Commission. And generally speaking, it aims to climate neutrality by 2050. If we look at the current policy framework that we have established also through the recent reforms, we can still see that this would not allow us to reach this goal of climate neutrality in 2050. A simple continuation of the implementation of the current framework or current legislation even would lead approximately to a greenhouse gas reduction of 45% by 2030 and minus 60% approximately by 2050. And that falls clearly low compared to what we need for the climate neutrality. Against this background, it is clear that the Commission had to act and to come forward with a new proposal for an adapted emission reduction pathway. And according to our impact assessment, to which I will refer a couple of times during my statement, that we change this reduction pathway from now minus 40% to at least 55%. Now, the impact assessment underpinning this climate target plan, this new pathway, at least 55%, clearly shows that the achievement of this target is doable. But it is also very clear that it needs actions in all sectors. There is no one silver bullet that will deliver us the 55% by 2030. And it is also clear with the energy production and consumption amounting still to 75% of the greenhouse gas emissions, the contribution of the energy sector to this increased target will be, of course, crucial. And therefore, an accelerated clean energy transition has a pivotal role here. From the energy perspective, the increased climate target will be driven by increased renewable energy deployment, energy efficiency, and electrification. The deployment of renewable energy will also trigger production of renewable hydrogen needed to bring down the emissions in those, especially in those sectors which are hard to abate. That can see that in the industry, but also in some segments of the transport or heating and cooling. But I have looked up some figures that, in my view, are quite interesting with regard to the achievement of the new 55% greenhouse gas reduction target. First of all, achieving a 55% reduction would mean a share of renewables in final energy consumption of 38 to 4% in 2030. This is significantly more than today's level, which was at 32, if you remind well. Even if we see now, after having examined and analyzed the national energy and climate plans, that we might get to a higher share of renewable than 32%. It is 33.1 to 33.7%, but it is still lower than what we need in 2030. So again, business as usual in the renewable energy deployment would not get us to these shares. So this means that the deployment of the renewable energy is one of the first elements to look at. And then if we look at the energy efficiency, here the situation is even less good because we are still even beyond our current target of 32.5%. Exactly, again, stemming from the analysis from the national energy and climate plans, we can see that we have a collective ambition gap today of 2.8 percentage points for primary and 3.1 percentage point for final energy consumption in the EU 27. And that is compared to the 32.5. But if we want to use the energy efficiency, and we need to use the energy efficiency to contribute to the achievement of the 55%, we need savings of 36 to 37% of the primary energy consumption and savings of 39 to 41% of the final energy consumption. So this, of course, also shows you what we have to achieve over the next 5 to 10 years, but it also shows you clearly that the challenges to do this and to get there is, of course, very, very big. The impact assessment also shows us here that all relevant policy instruments must work in coherence. We need to reinforce our emission trading system at EU level. As I said, renewable energy policies have to be, again, looked at, energy efficiencies, but also other instruments, notably in the field of transport, energy performance of buildings directive, government's regulation, eco-design directive. So the whole bunch of legislative acts that we have currently in place has to be looked at again and also adjusted as much as possible for this contribution. The electricity system as such, in my view, deserves a special attention, because what we see currently is a decrease of flexible sources of electricity generation due to the coal phase-out that is accelerated in 13 member states. And 7 have no coal, so you can see it can be quite a big challenge. And also some member states are going for nuclear retirement. And at the same time, as I have said, we need a growing share of renewable, means variable energy sources in our system. And that has to be compensated by new flexibility means along the whole electricity value chain. So to compensate the losses that we see. And here, the further deployment of renewable and low carbon fuels, notably clean hydrogen, will play an important role. But in order to make that happen, I also see that we have to work rapidly on a suitable internal market framework for these fuels. Additionally, and that is also something coming from our assessment, we have to make further efforts to adapt the energy system to more decentralized and also more digitalized energy systems. This has to become the backbone of our energy transition, and that will also help us to achieve our climate ambition. Furthermore, this would create new business opportunities around smart technologies with consumers at the center and system integration, development, and so it's not only that there are challenges, but we have also kind of number of opportunities. And when I look now at the concrete measures that can be taken, I can only refer here today to those that the Commission itself has already announced. And there's, of course, there are the actions plan that you can find in the energy system integration and hydrogen strategies that we have published 2 or 3 weeks ago. But additionally, I would like to mention also the following. First, the cost-effective planning and development of renewable energy technologies. And this means also that we have to remove the still existing market barriers and also providing sufficient incentives for demand for renewable energy, particularly in the heating and cooling, transport and industrial sectors. And that can go through further electrification. I've said that electrification is, of course, our primary objective, but 100% electrification will not work, and therefore also via the use of renewable and low carbon fuels, such as advanced biofuels, hydrogen. The second is we need to look into capacity building schemes, and this relates back to the decentralized production, implementing citizen-driven renewable energies, either individually, so households, or also in energy communities and renewable energy communities, which still have not taken up, although they are foreseen in the last electricity market design package. We need corporate sourcing of renewable energy, and why not establishing a minimum mandatory green public procurement criteria for renewable energy. Then we want to update methodology to promote the use of renewable and low carbon fuels in the transport sector, notably aviation and maritime. And here we have already the Sustainable Alternative Fuels Initiatives, Refuel EU Aviation and Fuel EU Maritime. We will reinforce the pull factors for faster and deeper renovation through adequate financial instruments. And here you will see upcoming in October our renovation wave. And then we, of course, will also present later this year in October our renewable offshore strategy and the revision of the 10E regulation, which will also already set the framework for an adjusted and aligned infrastructure framework that is aligned also to the new targets. As a last dimension, I would like to mention here research and innovation as definitely key enabler of the clean energy transition. And what is a bit problematic here is that what we see also from the plans that the member states have submitted, that we see a decline of public investment in clean energy research and innovation. And that is, of course, a tendency that is going against our intentions and our ambitions. And we have to make sure that we reinverse now the direction and bringing research and innovation investments up again. And whether we from the EU level will set the right framework for that, and now I'm gone.
No, we hear you.
No? Okay, my screen is black. Is questionable because, as you can see, cuts for Horizon. No, now I'm gone. No.
No, we hear you, and we see you.
Oh. Okay, but then I'm gone for me. Okay, so when you see the discussion in the MFF, there you can see that we expect cuts for Horizon Europe, and that, of course, aggravates the situation and is not making it better. That brings me to my last short point that I wanted to mention here, and this is the investment. It is clear that our increased climate ambition will require significant additional investments. Here's some figures. From 2021 to 2030, we need 350 billion euros per annum. More than in 2011 to 2020, where it was 260 billion. So we have an increase per annum of 90 billion euros compared with the last 10 years period. So this is, of course, quite substantial. And fortunately, I can say, is that we have a lot of instruments proposed, at least, and let's hope that the European legislator will adopt our package. You might remember that the July European Council summit allowed an agreement on the next multi-financial framework, MFF, and also the new next generation EU instruments, the recovery plan. And it also has confirmed the European Green Deal objectives, and with a total amount in the package of 1.8 trillion. And the first good thing is that 30% of the whole MFF expenditure should contribute to climate action. And that means also for the achievement of our new target, 55 reduction target. And then you have some main instruments that will play a pivotal role also in the financing of this accelerated transition. I can only mention a few of them. The Recovery and Resilience Facility, where you have, that's the recovery, part of the recovery plan, 312.5 billion on grants and 360 billion on loans, available for green and digital transition. And green transition means also the transition in the electricity sector. So this is fully available. We have the Conjunctum Europe facility with 5.18 billion. We have sustainable infrastructure part and other parts of the Invest EU, 8.4 billion. We have significant money also in the Cohesion Policy Fund, 322 billion resources. We have also in the Regional Development Fund, we have resources of which 30% are earmarked for the green objectives, and again means also achieving of our ambition. And we have a three-pillar just transition mechanism with a just transition fund, 17.5 billion, where we can use this money also for cushioning the coal phase out, notably. We have the Horizon Europe with 80.9 billion, and at least 15 billion are earmarked for energy. And then we have a lot of other funding like LIFE and so on, but I do not want to go in detail. So this is quite a substantial package of public EU money, but still it will not be sufficient, and therefore we need private capital. And there, of course, we also have to look how can we incentivize, and here we could also think of some mechanisms that would reduce the risks for private investors through maybe some guarantees that could be issued, for instance, by the EIB, notably. So let me conclude. Achieving minus 55% of greenhouse gas emission would definitely mean that we are looking at a new and greener energy mix in 2030. Coal consumption will be reduced by more than 70% compared to 2015. Oil will go down by 30%, and even natural gas will go down by 25%. Renewables will be up to 38 to 40% gross final consumption. We will, of course, need to underpin this by a lot of legislative corrective mechanisms, and all the proposals in this regard will be tabled by the Commission in June 2021. We will advance, as I have said, the infrastructure part that will come in December. Renewable energy, energy efficiency, transport policies and standards will be revised, and new policies might be introduced. So let me answer the question that was asked. Is it what we are seeing here a revolution, or is it an evolution? And I would say it is simply both. If it is a revolution, if we look at the transformation of our European economy, including our energy system, into a carbon neutral economy or a carbon neutral energy system, that's a revolution. But it is an evolution if you look at the simple increase of the greenhouse gas emission reduction target from minus 40 to at least minus 55%. That's a necessary intermediate step within the bigger revolutionary pathway, which I would call ambitious but doable evolution. I stop here, and I'm happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Dieter. That was awesome as always. We've agreed that I get to ask you one question, and Andris has asked me to be really, really cruel to you. And then Andris will ask the rest. So I get to ask you the nasty question.
Okay.
Now, so if you look at the IPCC says that in order to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, we need globally to have a 50% CO cut by 2030 and be carbon zero by 2050, basically.
Christopher, I cannot really understand you. You are cut into pieces.
Is that better, Dieter?
Oh, maybe I go out with my.
Hang on, I've stopped my video. Perhaps that's better.
Now it's better. Now it's better.
Okay, thank you. So the IPCC says globally we need a 50% CO2 cut by 2030 and zero carbon by 2050 to keep to 1.5 degrees, which is our objective. So that the EU's objective is clearly the minimum we need to do. That we know, and I think we all strongly support that. But then I just want to ask a reality check. Because I was just taking some of the numbers that we're talking about now. So I'm not disagreeing that these numbers are right, okay, and need to be done. But in order to hit a, say, 67% renewable, in order to hit the 38% renewable energy, on a back of the envelope calculation, that means we need to hit 67% renewable electricity in our electricity system by 2030, which means that the annual percentage increase in renewable electricity needs to go from 1.3% a year in the last 10 years to 2.9. So we need to have, every year, we need to do 150% more. Well, it's actually more than that. It's more like double of what we've done in the last 10 years. And we already have network constraints in Germany that are leading to curtailment charges of over $1 billion a year in 2018. So number one. Secondly, energy efficiency. If you look at the member states' national energy and climate plans, well, first of all, if I understand correctly, we might just make the 20%, thanks to COVID, energy efficiency target. If you actually look on what the member states say they're going to do in energy efficiency, the numbers aren't great and the details are more or less not there. Energy consumption has gone up pretty much every year over the last 10 years in the EU when we weren't affected by an economic crisis. And the numbers you give, that we need 350 billion a year in investment, then all of a sudden the European Recovery Plan of 750 billion, of which 37% needs to be spent in terms of Green Deal, is only 262 billion. So it's coffee money in terms of the investment that needs to be done. So I think my question is, Dieter, so there's two questions. Can we actually do this whilst keeping energy costs down and dealing with energy poverty? And is the Commission going to be really intrusive, aggressive, if you want to call that, in terms of the national energy climate plans and the national European recovery plans, in order to make sure that the investments actually happen and happen in a logical and cost-effective way? Because you kind of get the impression that without the Commission really pushing member states to raise their game, that this might just not happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christopher. And it is completely understandable that you're asking the question, shouldn't we do a reality check? I hope, at least, that our experts who have worked on a more than 500 pages impact assessment that is underpinning the climate target plan, and who have worked under 3 different scenarios, that this work has been carried out thoroughly, and that the figures that are popping up from that analysis are robust. And I have tried also to outline a bit where the big areas are in which we have to do better, as you have rightly said. I mean, the outset is clear. We stick to our ambition, and that we want to, as the IPCC has said, that what needs to be done for keeping the global warming at 1.5 degrees. So that's clear. And if you take it from there, then it is also clear in the analysis that we in Europe, we need to do more than minus 50%. And that's why we say it is at least 55%. So that's also clear. So now we are coming to the real issue. How do we get there? And you have raised some elements. Look, the renewable share, it is true, we need absolutely a dramatic increase in renewable generation. Here, I think what we need is we need to accelerate certain big projects. We have to accelerate the deployment of offshore wind. Photovoltaic is still something that we can do. We should also, when we talk about renewables, we should also integrate into that the renewable and low carbon gases, I would say. And this all together has to move faster than we have foreseen it. That's one point. Now, will it happen? Will we? You mentioned the electricity grid that still has some weak points that we all also know, and therefore the infrastructure development has to go, of course, hand in hand with this development. Will we do that? That, of course, also depends on how member states succeed in accelerating the permitting processes, all the administrative burdens that are still in the system, that they are coming up with auctions and these kind of things. And here, of course, it is related to the national energy and climate plans and also national recovery plans. This is for us now the benchmark that the Commission has to take and will take. And we are currently working. You have seen also that we have issued the aggregated results of all the 27 national energy and climate plans that we have received. And we are currently working on the individual assessments that we will add or annex to the Energy Union state speech that will come in October. So here, in this assessment of the plans, we will pinpoint exactly to the shortcomings on the individual member state level with regard also to the new climate target. You have mentioned also the financing, and it's true, 350 billion per annum. It's quite a lot, and if you only see the recovery plan money with 750, it's or 680. It is you call it coffee money, but it is clear that you cannot cover such an amount only from public funding. Even if you take EU funding and then the national funding that comes on top of it altogether, we need private capital. Therefore, we need project pipeline that is robust, that can be implemented. The recovery plan money has to be committed by 2023 at the latest. So what we really need is from industry, from project promoters, the project that can be implemented as soon as possible. So we need an acceleration in this. And last point that you mentioned, and it's true, the costs for the households will go up. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And you are also right that this will, of course, have a bigger impact on the low-income households than on the richer ones. And that also means that we will look at what the member states are proposing in terms of fight against energy poverty and protection of vulnerable consumers in their national systems, because we cannot afford, and what we always said, nobody should be left behind, also means the very, very individuals that are in the need and that they might suffer the most need to be compensated. And that also means, for instance, what we also have already analyzed, that we should, if we are now extending the ETS and we are increasing also the carbon price, which will bring money into the system, that part of this money should also be spent especially to cover these extra costs for vulnerable and energy poor.
Thank you, Klaus-Dieter. I picked up 4 questions that I hope that you will have a time to reflect on. One is rather critical, because when we address sustainability issues, it's always a question is, What about security of supply and also affordability and particular energy poverty? Is it really an issue that we need to deal with? And that people are worried that they could have a situation where they will be not able to pay the costs of energy supply. So how big these risks for security of supply and energy poverty are when we address sustainability? The second issue, you created electricity market design. Does it need to be reviewed? For example, for new role for DSOs. Also, renewable energy generation goes so massively, so should it be priority dispatch? Third, it's related to gas sector. What you would expect from gas industry to do it now? To wait until there is some guidance from the European Commission and member states, or already to be proactive doing something? And last but not least, what I got from the question, it's this energy efficiency. You have invested enormous effort really to cut down consumption. But perhaps there is some limits what we could expect, and wouldn't it be more realistic that we keep, well, 32.5%, knowing that we would need to do more on renewable energy or somewhere else, because energy efficiency goes so difficult that perhaps this linear approach is not just strong enough, or perhaps your review of the way towards the target demonstrates that, well, it's a bit of, I would say, not sufficient ambition from the member countries, and we can achieve by far more. Voilà, that's the questions I picked up from what we have from audience. Klaus-Dieter, which ones you would like to really address? But I believe the first is definitely the crucial. Affordability, sustainability, and security of supply. Are there serious risks in this way to 55?
So let me start then with that question, affordability, risk for security of supply, and sustainability. I think let me start with the easiest one. What we try to do is to bring more sustainability into our energy system. So all what we are doing will, of course, bring us further. The question is, do we keep the other two overarching objectives, affordability and security of supply, in balance? Or are we now moving too far with the sustainability objective? That's the real question. And here I can start with the security of supply. I have tried to focus on that and said already that yes, we will lose in our energy, especially in our electricity system, a lot of flexible electricity generation that needs to be compensated. And this is something that you can only partially do within the electricity area. I mentioned increase of decentralized generation, which I really believe in, and there's a potential. Demand side management, these kind of things that are not yet sufficiently deployed on the one side. But for me, and let me link that to your third question with the gas, for me, it is absolutely vital for the energy security part, that we have as a second pillar a very, very strong gas development. And when I say gas, I mean that for me, and I am not hiding away with that, it is absolutely vital that we are not starting now an unholy discussion when natural gas has to go out of our system. What we should say is, natural gas, and that's what is my opinion, natural gas will stay as long and has to stay as long in our system as we are not replacing it by other less polluting fuels, which can be, and that's why we have put forward a hydrogen strategy. It could be low carbon hydrogen, stemming from natural gas stream reforming with CCUS or pyrolysis, and ultimately renewable hydrogen stemming from electrolysis later on. So this is something that we have to see together. You cannot come forward with a gas strategy that turns a blind eye on natural gas. This is, in my view, a kind of insurance. If we are ending this insurance, then I am convinced that we will run into security of supply problems in our markets. And then remains the affordability. And here, I think we have managed, fortunately, in our latest reform, the installation of an energy poverty observatory. There we get a lot of data. And this, of course, we will also now use this data in order to work out with the member states the right framework to protect the energy poor and vulnerable. What I want to underline in this respect is that when you look at the energy transition, the starting point for the 27 member states is different. You have, and that also means that member states are affected by the transition process in different ways. In some regional European areas, you will not have this dramatic poverty and vulnerability problems. Take the western parts of and the western and northern parts of Europe. You will not feel this. Let's be clear. But if you go to southeastern European countries and Central European countries, the situation is completely different. And that is also why we need to focus on those member states and to work out robust systems that not necessarily need to be anchored in the energy field. It can also be anchored in other social assistance policies. But this is something that we have to manage, because otherwise we will lose the credibility of our energy transition. Then you have asked on the market design that we have adopted only in 2018, 2019. As I have said, it will not be a complete overhaul of what we have adopted and developed. I think that would be a big mistake because there are a lot of good basic things in the RED II directive, in the electricity directive and regulation, which we absolutely need to implement, because this must be the basis for the future development. But the question is it sufficient? Is it really sufficient to implement, for instance, the minimum 70% cross-border capacity availability? Yes, it is important in order to also make the internal market work better, so that we can transport energy, electricity, easier from one country to the other. As I said, you will have production centers, generation centers, let's say photovoltaic, wind in Spain. And we know we have shortcomings between Spain and France for bringing this energy to other places in Europe. These are the projects that we need to accelerate. We need to have a more systemic planning of infrastructure. We need to, in my view, we need to take the map of Europe or regions of Europe. We have to look what is the current electricity grid. You talked about synergies, electricity grid and gas grid. Then you have to look in the same region, where are the consumption centers for what? Electricity, gas, hydrogen. And then you have to see how to bring the generation and the consumption then also together in terms of the necessary infrastructure. And what we really need, and what has not yet been done at EU level, is a kind of analysis of the network needed in, let's say, 2030 or 2035 and in 2050. So a real integrated planning that you are doing here in order to make sure that we are not ending up in what Christopher fears, that we might have generation and we might have the demand, but we do not have the means to bring the energy there where it is needed. And finally, energy efficiency. Here, I also see the need to reopen the Energy Efficiency Directive, and I think it will also happen. We will now, you said maybe it's not good to have this linear approach, and I tend to agree with you. But I must also confess that I'm not the biggest expert in energy efficiency. So I do not dare to walk into the moving sand there. But what I can say is that it is not just a political floscle that you say energy efficiency first principle. I think it has its good reasoning. And what we are now working on here in the Commission is a guidance paper for the member states, how to best implement this principle. And I also can say that we have great hope in the positive impact of our renovation wave that we are preparing, and it is coming in October. Are we overselling it? I don't know. But I think that when you read the communication and the regulation that backs it, you will see that there are, for the first time, as far as I know, also it's at least the attempt to integrate different things. Until now, renovation was more the insulation of houses and things. Now I think we go a step further, which is more linked to what we call the integrated energy system, where energy efficiency has its place, where we already see also how can we combine not only the insulation, but also the heating and cooling, also the charging for electric vehicles, also the digitalization that comes with it also in the housing sectors. So we also try to bring together the different elements in order to get to better results in the effective efficiency of buildings. So these are the approaches that we have, but I mean, we can only prove once we have started the implementation of all these ideas, whether we are a part of the reality or we are just going too far out there with nice ideas, but which will not work. But I think you have to be candid here, and you have to do something. I mean, just to sit there and developing these ideas is not enough. Therefore, for me, the crucial point on all what I have said is projects, 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 projects. I think we have the global framework. We have now also opted for, and I like that, for this integrated energy system where we bring everything together. But now let's please do it. And I know from own experience, when I talk to industries or associations, there are a lot of good projects, but please let them come more to the public knowledge, and then also let's help the financing so that we start implementing. As long as we are just talking, of course, nothing will happen. We need projects and implementing projects.
Klaus-Dieter, thank you very much. It was really not only convincing a professional presentation, but also encouraging. Let's hope that the industries that also listen to our conversation will come forward with the projects, because it's true, non-policy framework can replace the project. You need both. You need a policy framework, and basically it is in place, and then you need also projects. So thank you very much. We appreciate, as usual, your style and your approach, and I believe that you will stay with energy transition, because so much to do, and in the worst case we can help Chinese, because they would like to be carbon neutral by 2060, only 10 years difference. So we have also concurrent now. Thank you very much, and I wish you a nice day, and next fantastic continuation of your career. Thank you very much, and thank you
very much.
Thank you, and for our.
Thank you, Andris.
Thank you,
my pleasure.